So today we're working on a CodingBat problem, array1 double23. So given an integer array, return true if the array contains 2 twice or 3 twice. The array will be length 0, 1, or 2. So we're told that the length of the array will be 0, 1, or 2. In other words, the length of the array cannot be 2 or greater, or it cannot be greater than 2. It can certainly be 2 because that's what's specified in the problem statement, but it cannot be greater than 2. It's either 0, 1, or 2. Recall that the length of the array is essentially just the number of boxes which are formed in memory, which can hold potential data, also called elements. So if I said that I had an array length of 5, then that would just be 5 boxes. So this one says that the array length will be 0, 1, or 2, and return true if the array contains 2 twice or 3 twice. This is a trick question. There's a lot going on that it wants you to sort of explicitly know, but it's sort of implied. It's implied this hidden condition, and this hidden condition is this. Well, if you think about it, you can only have an array which contains a number twice if the array is at least of length 2. In other words, if I want to have in my array either a repetition of 2 or a repetition of 3, then my array must at least be length 2. And so what does this mean? Well, what if my length array was 1? This is what something like that would look like. Well, if the length of my array was 1, I can't have a repetition of a number. And if the length of my array was 0, I'd have nothing. And so I definitely can't have a repetition of a number. And so this tells you that the length of the array is so important in the context of this particular problem. So we know that if the length of the array is less than 2, we only have 3 options. That there's 0, 1, or 2. That's the length. So if it's 0 or 1, that is, of course, the length, then we can't contain 2 numbers, in which case we will return false. So we're going to have a Boolean variable called contains, and that's going to be set to false. And of course, later on in the program, if we do sense that there is a 2 next to a 2 in the array, then of course we'll change it to true. But if you'll see here that if nums.length is less than 2, then of course contains is equal to false. We will come back to this later and see if this if is needed. So we'll say else, and else is sort of a catch-all. If it's not less than 2, right? It's not 0, 1. It's not 0 or 1. And there's only one other possibility, that it can be equal to 2. It can't be greater than 2, although that's probably a good guess, but it can't be greater than 2 because the length of the array is either 0, 1, or 2. So if it's not less than 2, in other words, it's not 0 or 1, then there's only one other possibility, which is to say it can only be equal to 2. So this else really catches that event. So if it's equal to 2, then what do we want to do? Well, if it is in fact equal to 2, then we want to essentially check if the first element in the array, and this is of course, let me put a box up here. So let's say we had a length of 2. So this is the length of 2, and of course we can have elements in here. Let me just put 2 and 2, and these elements are referenced by their indexes. So we have two elements of length 2, an array of length 2, and we have a total of 1 index inclusive of 0. So we first want to check if nums, that's the name of the array, at index 0 is equal to 2. Or in other words, if the element referenced by the index 0, is that equal to 2? So if nums of 0 is equal to 2, or nums of 0 is equal to 3, then we're going to do something inside this if statement. What are we going to do? Well, if nums of 0 was essentially equal to 2, then we want to check if nums of the next index after nums of 0, which is of course nums sub 1. So if both the element at the 0th index is 2 and the element at the first index is 2, then we can safely say that contains is equal to true, right? Otherwise, and this is of course catching if it's 3, so we're only going to be inside this block of code if it's either a 2 or a 3. And if it's a 2, then we've prepared for that eventuality. And if it's a 1, or rather if it's 3, we're going to do that now. So if nums of I, or if the first element in the array was equal to 3, which is of course what led us into this block of code anyways, if that is equal to 3 and nums of 1, which is of course the next element in the array referenced by the next index, if that is equal to, if that too is equal to 3, then contains will equal to true. So after it's all said and done, we'll just return contains, right? So we have our else statement. This is our overarching if statement. This is our else statement here, down here. And so let's see. So after the else statement, and of course the if, we will return contains. That of course could either be true or false. And you'll see that we're missing something here. Seems like we are in fact missing our method or illegal start of expression. Let's see here. Yeah, I think I must have. It says that we have a and I think I put an extra brace where I shouldn't have. I don't think it's gonna. Okay, awesome. So there's that, right? Now, another thing you could have done in the problem is you could have essentially said, well, we're going to come inside this bracket if the first element in the array referenced by the 0th index is equal to 2 or 3. And if you do that, that's fine. Then we'll check if it's a 2, if the first element in the array is a 2 and the next element is a 2, then we'll return true. Otherwise, if it's a 3 and the next element is 3, then we'll return true as well. But we're kind of doing the same thing. We can merge these conditions here. We can say, well, if that's the case or this is the case, then in both cases, we'd want to return true. And of course, we'd get all greens as well. Now, another thing that I want to say is I think maybe we don't have to specify if nums.length is less than 2. I think we'll just say if nums.length is equal to 2, then and only then do we want to do all of this. So I think we'll just sort of take that out of here and we'll say if nums.length is equal to 2, then we'll do all of this. Otherwise, contains will be false regardless. And of course, we get all greens in that situation as well.